conflict is not appreciated necessarily as for its benefit, but rather is substantiated as a deterrent of normal functioning, and therefore is believed to be the true demarcation of degradation and loss of goodness, for lack of a better term. The point of the matter is that conflict is in itself nothing more than the intersection of two parts, whether it is the conflict between street and house, the conflict between appliance and house, the conflict between doorway and inner room. The reason they are all conflicts is because the supposition of one property, namely the house, is in opposition of the other, namely the street. There is a conflict because the present system of one, as we would appropriate it to be, is against the other system. This is obviously assuming that each system is expanding in inevitable proportion, meaning if we would constitute the house as simply a construct of its specific domain, then it is not in conflict with the street because it is in itself without any property that seeks to expand beyond itself. However, because systems are necessarily bound to other systems, it automatically presupposes that it seeks to expand upon other systems, to which then it meets the conflicting ground. The reason that systems must intersect with other systems is because the entire notion of a system, an idea that surrounds moving parts, is that the idea is embedded in another idea, right? There's no reason to have appliances or any furniture if you have no home. That system of inner materials is only because of the outer materials, and there's no reason to have a home if there's no streets or city surrounding it. It wouldn't be called a home, it would be called just a residence of nature. But even we're getting stuck in the weeds with the example, because in a way nature becomes the road, and then that's the intersection of systems. But still, any system is based on an idea, and that idea must intersect with other ideas for it to be relevant as an idea, because a standalone idea doesn't prove to be worthwhile of any articulation, because it doesn't have any matter to something broader than itself. It just falls short on its embeddedness, and therefore it doesn't have the attributes, right? An appliance that has no house to surround it technically is of some use, but only becomes like systematic as a property of a structure when it is housed, and is rather lost almost until that point, right? If you see an appliance on the street, it is something, it's a material, but it's not that. Then it's embedded in the street, in the system of the street, meaning it's just a production of society. It doesn't have the setting that it's meant to become part of. Most utopian, dystopian visions of the world include the usages of appliances or random aspects of modern society that are used alternate than its natural supposition of what it's meant to be used for. Like a refrigerator door might be used for, to enclose a structure or whatnot. It's the emblem of a dystopian world, because there's no systems that are attempting to interact, and the systems that were created for these items are no longer pertinent, and then what we're left with is the new function of the dystopian world based on its structure and ideas that don't have relevance to these particulars of modern society. But moving back to the notion of conflict, so then the conflict is not necessarily negative or disassociative from normal functioning, but a necessary participation of the process of development in terms of the in-between of systems. And so let's say one's youth would be in conflict with one's adulthood, right? I wouldn't say that's negative. One becomes in conflict with another. That's the autonomy of the individual proclaiming itself despite the love that bonds one to another. That's more aspiring as a creation of selfhood out of the merging of two selves than anything else. So what I believe is understood as conflict in its negative association is that every system is expected to expand exponentially without having to deal with the intersection, or that there's like some sort of seamlessness between intersections. And this is not appropriating the reality of experience, because there's a clear demarcation between systems. There's a process where there is a shift, a rift, because if not, then there is no participation in the beginning or the initial system. Meaning, one could say that there is a merging of two people together, and then the conflict or the separation is mutually beneficial and understood, and therefore. But I would argue that there was no initial proposition of individuality that had the merging occur. So therefore, there is no need for the proposition of conflict, because it was seamless from the start. So there is no merging necessary. There is no conflict necessary, because it is completely unindividualized from its onset. And therefore, seamlessness is not necessarily a trait of anything other than the initial loss of autonomy. The rift has to be not seamless. It has to be unstructured for it to be part of a process of autonomy of systems that intersect and then disenfranchise according to their strict parameters. It has to be that the in-between spaces is, I wouldn't say ugly, but disparaging, and there's a disparity between those two parts, and it's bleak, but it's not. It's bleak if one resides in the conflict. I think that's maybe the most true aspect of the negative association towards conflict. It's the settling in the state of conflict, so that it is less about when the merging occurred initially, or in what way one begins to start the autonomy of each system, each person, each part, but rather just that disparity. It's really the immaturity of clinging to both sides. It's almost the adjacent, the parallel attempt of seamlessness, but in its reverse. Like, seamlessness attempts to say that there is no conflict, because even in the change between integration is mutually accepted, and therefore there is no conflict. It's just moving in and through, sort of. But the same thing is about residing in conflict. For the residence of conflict is the attempt of keeping both systems, which is that same idea of seamlessness. It's unwilling to abide by either system. It's wanting to never proclaim autonomy on either side. There's no selfhood to be proclaimed. The difference between the approach, although the intentions are the same, of remaining without an anchor to a specific system that's proposed, that's propositionalized and proclaimed outwards is that with the seamless approach, like the in and through, it is without an initial system from the onset. There is no articulation to begin with. It's not this a developed personal selfhood that's inclined in its corner and its particulars that then meets another side and another system that's completely opposite and contrary, and there's this merging of processes that doesn't occur because there was no initial system. So therefore it's seamless because it never began the equation of merging. But in the case of like residents of conflict, of residing in the disparity, there was a true state of autonomy of each side or each particular, and there was a case of an experience merging to begin with. It is just that there is a lack of willingness to participate in the autonomy that comes after the merging. It's the avoidance of what would be a reconstitution of distinct particulars. That there's the avoidance. So instead, it's this attempt to reside in the conflict, not so much to retain the merge state, because they don't want it. There's a state of conflict. It's that world is almost gone, but it's the hatred of the dread of the outcome of what it would mean to reconstitute oneself as a particular once again, according to those merged aspects and according to what it was like before there was a merging. It is really the rearticulation of one's historical past and the complications. We notice this commonly by long-standing relationships, especially those institutionalized through marriage and whatnot, where there's this residence of disparity because there's such a complication to reach back into the autonomous state, for the very fact that there was a form of codependence or a loss of autonomy for a long period. And so there's no other solution other than to reside in the conflict, because there is no newfound person awaiting them because of the complications of revisiting the process, and there is no going back to the state before the conflict, because they're in a state of, they've built up a new state, the state of conflict. And so, but that's the negative association to conflict. I wouldn't say that's the necessary proposition of what conflict is. It is rather the separation and merging of systems, and it's rather the association of residing in the disparity that has the cause of hatred towards, or the dread towards conflict. And so, yeah, that's just some thoughts about conflict. Thank you.